the US is reportedly sending more convicted migrants to Eswatini as it steps up deportation campaigns in the country. The nations have finalized, we're told, an agreement that will see the deportation of individuals convicted of serious crimes, including terrorism, back to the Southern African country. This deal confirmed during a cabinet meeting held last week. But let's get a sense of what we know about it. Melusi Simelane is with the Southern Africa Litigation Centre. Melusi, it's great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. How much do we know about the legal and particularly the diplomatic framework? First of all, notwithstanding the fact that more migrants will be sent to Eswatini, but the initial 5 prisoners who were transferred.
Thank you, Michelle, and good afternoon to your viewers. Listen, we are facing a sort of a problem in this country where you've got a prime minister and his cabinet who are making decisions without any scrutiny. Over and above that, they're refusing oversight. I mean, this report, we all as a country have learned through the media that it's another 150 people who are being brought into the country. But let's start with the 5. What we know from the Prime Minister's press release that he did the week prior is that they did regret that they didn't inform the nation about bringing such people into the country. But over and above that, he went on to say he does not believe he should be sharing the details of this information. And worse off, he even told Parliament during a written response last Thursday that he does not believe that Parliament has the right to question him on this. And I think this also forms part of the problem that we're facing, where you've got a head of executive who's actually slapping on the face of separation of powers, where he's avoiding oversight and is avoiding accountability to Parliament, who is actually supposed to be his watchdog to make sure that whatever decision he's making is informed by the law. But as far as we know, there is no legal basis that has been used to bring these people into the country, whether it's the Correctional Services Act, which actually says you can only incarcerate people who have broken Swazi laws, and there's a legit warrant from a court of law for those people to be incarcerated, or there is actually even a letter from a minister that allows the correctional services to house them. So there's nothing like that that allows it to happen. And also, we've got the Transfer of Convicted Offenders Act, which speaks about the transfer of prisoners. And that law in itself anticipates a situation where Swazi is being incarcerated, is being sort of convicted in a foreign country and therefore has to be brought into Swaziland or vice versa. So we do not anticipate, based on our laws that we have in the country, a situation where third-party countries' citizens are going to be brought into Swaziland, number one. But number two, where the head of the government actually refuses to answer questions about what sort of legal basis is there, because as far as we are concerned, there is no legal basis for it.
So when we say Eswatini and the US have reached a deal on the deportation of these convicted criminals, I suppose the question is, the US has gone on and on about getting, and these are sort of rephrased quotes, but getting criminals off US shores and so on. But then we're moving them to Eswatini. What is in it for your country then?
I think that's one of the other questions that our parliamentarians had asked the Prime Minister this previous weekend. As civil society, we've also been questioning the country to say, look, number one, we know from the Human Rights Commission in the country working with the UNDP that our prisons are overrun. They're overcrowded. That's number one. But number two, they're under-resourced. As an organization, we are currently working with the SADC PF to look at a model law that looks into prisons oversight, because we're trying to say, let's go back to the Mandela rules in terms of the minimum standard for the treatment of prisoners. So you are bringing these third-party people into a country that has an influx of prisoners that even the king himself is reported to have said he is trying to give people some clemency so he can make space in our prison system. So we do not really know what the benefit is. Suffice to say, the Prime Minister did say to Parliament on his written response that not a single taxpayer's dime was being spent on the upkeep. But the funny thing is that on the same breath, he then says there's no benefit for the country with this sort of prisoner exchange, for lack of a better word. So like I said at the beginning, we are actually in a situation where the executive is running away from accountability. And we do believe that the only way we can hold him to accountability, if he fails to account to Parliament, is at least going to our court systems.
Yeah. Are there human rights questions here as well with the transfer of these prisoners and sending them back home, which is what the US has said all along, sending them back home to their countries of origin?
Oh, absolutely. We have actually, our colleagues, our attorneys, both in Swaziland and the United States, have been having conversations with us around the situation where some of these people were already being represented in the court system in the United States, where they were actually challenging their deportations before the Trump administration brought them into Swaziland. So there are conversations around habeas corpus, for instance, the issue of due process, to say, Do the people even know that they're being held in Eswatini? Do they even know of a country called Eswatini, if we're being frank? So these are some of the conversations that we're having with both attorneys in the country and attorneys in the United States. But also just to say, last Friday, one of our colleagues who is an attorney in Swaziland that we've been working with actually tried to go visit these people in the prison facilities and actually was denied entry because of some sort of legal gymnastic loopholes that they have created to ensure that they do not allow anyone to make sure that they have actually got physical evidence of seeing these people, number one, but number two, being able to question them on the instruction of their attorneys back in the United States to understand if they know why they were brought here or if they even consented to being brought into Swaziland.
So fair to say that many questions are still unanswered in this case. I know that your organization, the Southern African Litigation Center, has threatened legal action. Does this give you the information that you need to proceed with that?
I mean, fundamentally, there is no legal basis. And of course, we are going to pursue this legal action because the detention of these individuals cannot be purely on a gentleman's agreement between leaders, both elected and unelected. So that is why we're actually looking into, number one, our Correctional Services Act to say what along that act provides for this incarceration of these people. But number two, the Transfer of Offenders Act. And then also, finally, our immigration laws, because you'll remember, Michelle, these are people the United States have said are dangerous criminals. They have been convicted of heinous crimes, and our Immigration Act prohibits such people as our Immigration Act categorizes such people as prohibited immigrants, and only a minister can allow for such people to be allowed entry into Swaziland only on a temporary basis. So we are interested in finding out if the Minister of Home Affairs agreed to this and whom he consulted. That is why we were actually shattered when the head of government, Prime Minister, last Thursday told Parliament that he does not believe that this deal should be discussed in Parliament. And these are some of the issues that, of course, we will be bringing into our court systems to find out exactly what sort of agreement was made here, number one, but also over and above that, our Constitution on Section 236 speaks about our foreign policy being one that must advance the interest of Swazi citizens. So there's a question around who benefits here. You asked me earlier about a supposed financial gain, and the Prime Minister has said there's no financial gain. So the question then begs, who gains in bringing supposed dangerous people into Swaziland? And also, if we follow the news developments in the US and both in Jamaica as an example, there's news reports in Jamaica that suggest that the foreign minister in Jamaica was already in conversation to try and bring some of their nationals back into Jamaica. So right now you've got a Trump administration that has sort of jumped the gun and deported people to a third-party country known as Swaziland without any sort of understanding if the original countries of these people have actually been interested to bring them in. So these are some of the questions that we're looking at bringing into our courts to ensure that we go back to, look, we're celebrating 20 years of constitutionalism in Swaziland. So we need to make sure that we've got a government that abides by the Constitution, but also is accountable to Parliament and the people.
Certainly. Is this bizarre to the point that you've not heard of a story like this anywhere in the world before, Melusi?
It is so bizarre. I mean, we've obviously seen it happen in the US where they've been sending people to El Salvador. But I think our argument is to say it might be happening elsewhere in the world. Whatever sort of political games the President of the United States is playing should not involve Swaziland. Because I've said to colleagues, this is not even a fight for Swaziland. This is a fight for SADC. Because what we're being used here is conduits for political expediency of the Trump administration. And I do not believe any country in Southern Africa should allow this to happen. And we are going to be the test case in Swaziland where we are going to actually challenge the government. So that should South Africa, should Botswana, should Malawi, should any country in the region tries to sign this deal, Parliament is allowed to have oversight. Should they try to do this deal, the courts are allowed to interrogate whether or not there is benefit for this.
Certainly. Melusi Simelane, thanks for your time this afternoon. He's with the Southern African Litigation Center in Eswatini, and certainly still many unanswered questions in this story.